Welcome to the next portion of the conference. So we're going to have a panel here called Data Huddle, Insights from the NFL. And I did indeed use ChatGPT to name this panel. Looked up, what would be good for 3 people that work at the NFL league office with data. And then it spit this out. So this is great. I'm happy with this. Okay, but I'm more than happy, though, to introduce the 3 members of this panel. So you've already met Tom Bliss, but in the middle here we have Zuri Hunter, data engineer at the National Football League. And then we have, closest to me, Clive-Anthony Stanberry, and he is a data quality engineer in the NFL on the player health safety division side. I'll let the 3 of them take a moment to introduce themselves and give an overview about what their roles are in the NFL. And let's give a warm welcome as well.
Hi, thanks everyone. So my name is Clive-Anthony. As a data quality engineer, my role basically is looking at how we can cleanse a lot of the data we have coming in from all the clubs, all their practice sessions, walkthroughs, and game data. And the overarching intent of this is that data is used to understand strain on the players and prevent injuries. I work collaboratively with Zuri and Tom, whether it's working on reporting or different applications, which I'm sure Zuri you'll get into. So that's me.
Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's enjoying this lovely conference. My name is Zuri Hunter. I graduated from the illustrious Howard University, majored in computer information systems, and now I'm currently at the NFL as a data engineer. My day-to-day work is working closely with these lovely data engineers and data scientists, working specifically within the ticketing and viewer rating segment within the data analytics business unit. Prior to that, I actually was in government contracting out in DC, building mission critical applications for intelligence agencies. So a lot of software engineering work. So I like to characterize my career as a jack of all trades, but a master of none, but better than mastering one. So I do touch a lot of aspects within software development, which transfers very closely within data engineering here at the league.
And my name is Tom Bliss. You saw my talk earlier. So I'm a data scientist. I'm mostly working in R and Python. I'm doing research. I'm sort of answering questions. One thing that I sort of tend to focus on, I focus on the NFL schedule, as you could kind of tell in my previous talk. I also focus on officiating, and I do some other stuff on football technology. I'm thankful to work with both of these 2 people next to me.
All right, so what does the day-to-day of your roles look like? And part of the personal question for me before we open it up is, what exactly is a data engineer?
Okay, I'll start off with that. So I'm going to give an example. A data engineer basically takes a gold ore, right? The gold ore has a whole bunch of rocks and gold flecks in it. And their job is to extract that gold, turn it into gold blocks, so that the data scientists could create amazing jewelry and stuff. So that is essentially what data engineer is. We're taking the data that's not in its best format, transforming it, massaging it into a way that the data scientists could do their modeling, their analysis, because you want their focus to be on building models, not cleaning data, not getting the data and all that good stuff. So that's where my role is within the league, as well as helping them out as far as deploying applications or leveraging cloud resources. So here at the league, we use the AWS. So my huge role is helping out and providing scripts and codes to help them take their processes, take their modeling, and put it in AWS so they can have faster results and send out their reports.
That was a really great analogy. So I've always thought of data engineering as, making the pipelines that move, data from one place to another. I think that's probably the simplest way I've been able to put it. Day to day, for me, working with player health and safety data, it's looking at the incoming data we have from all 32 clubs and working with the athletic trainers on, how certain things are recorded or entered, and how we're measuring lost time due to an injury or participation levels in different practices or games. And with that, because it's a lot of human input data in addition to some tracking data, within like, cleats and shoulder pads, it can be quite messy. So you can try and automate and have defined rules, but then you're always gonna have special cases based on what's actually happening on the field.
Awesome. And I'm going to leave the definition of data engineering to these two. So just take whatever they said and assume that's the correct definition. But my day-to-day, I do a lot in R and Python, as I noted. I'm, whether I'm visualizing sort of data, whether I'm building a model, it kind of depends on what is asked. During the season, I'm probably doing more quick analyses, trying to answer quick questions, or sending out reports that I make every week to various stakeholders within the league. During the off season, I might get into more longer term projects, such as like the scheduling project that I just described. I'm also involved in the Big Data Bowl and organizing that and sort of getting that rolling.
So what does the interaction between you look like in the league office in terms of the role of the data engineer and the interaction with the data scientist? Could you describe, at a high level, like what that interaction looks like?
Well, I will say if Tom has an idea or a project or some application that needs to be shared within executives, I would need to be involved from the very beginning. So figuring out, okay, he needs this data source. Where is it going to be stored? Where am I pulling it from? And then how often am I pulling this from? I'll ask those questions. He'll provide me an answer for it. And then I'll leverage what we have within AWS to have that automated and in place. Once I have that done, then it's moving on to like, hey, I want to create reports for this. Or I would love to create a Shiny application for this. How would I go about and having this done within the AWS infrastructure within the league? So that's where I'm involved from the very beginning all the way to the end. And after that, as a data engineer.
Yeah, I think like pretty much as Zuri's saying, it's project to project. There's going to be different levels of interaction. So for example, Tom, if you're working on something specific to participation levels, then we might collaborate there because there'll be different nuances with how we're getting data in for different participation events. The international games is a good example of that because a lot of things change there when you're looking at the stadiums or the surfaces internationally. And then with Zuri, a lot of work on the application side, and Zuri's not giving herself enough credit because like we do all this work in R or Python, and you're able to present a dashboard, but now to serve it to users or serve any sort of interaction to users, there's a lot of things to consider, whether it's the authentication and having the right people see the right data that they're able to see and log in and securing that. There's a lot of work that goes beyond just building the model and then walking away.
Before we open it up to questions from the crowd, I do have a couple questions from Carnegie Mellon Sports Analytics Club students. I'm going to ask them to come down here. This isn't a prize, competition, game show or whatever, but come on down and you're going to ask your questions, introduce yourselves, and hopefully during that time, think of questions you have for this trio up front, and we'll walk around with the mic for open questions. All right, start first here.
Hi, I think this question is primarily for you, Tom. Sorry, I'm Jake Sherwint. I'm a senior at Carnegie Mellon majoring in analytics. And Tom, I was curious if you could talk about how league level analytics investments have, grown over the past few years, and then like what also we can expect in the future.
Yeah. So I think like when I joined the NFL, it was me and my manager, Mike Lopez. It was two of us. And now we're a much bigger group of like 8 or 9 of us. So I think a lot more people are getting opportunities to sort of work in data. I think there are a lot more things that we can do with more people. I think tracking data is definitely the future. And I think that's part of the reason why we have the Big Data Bowl to sort of highlight that. I think there are so many interesting problems that are still unsolved with the tracking data. So I would say that is kind of where things are going to go. I think more and more technology in the game to either sort of help officiating or to just provide more information to analysts, I think is going to be sort of provided through that lens.
Hi, my name is Abi. I'm a sophomore in stats and machine learning here at CMU. One thing I've always been interested in is like film study and scheme concepts. So I'm curious how, like, especially with like the big data bowl on the horizon, how teams are using data both from like extracting it from its raw source perspective and analyzing it once it's been cleaned. What are some sort of ways in which they're leveraging that to supplement or complement their own film study from both a coaching and scouting perspective?
I can probably take that one again. So I watch film all the time. I think often, you might look at a play, like depending, no matter what you're analyzing, if you're analyzing something on the play-by-play level, maybe not the NFL schedule stuff, I'm not watching film, but on the play-by-play level, you watch a play, you might have a play description, you might have data, you might have even like PFF data or tracking data that says this is what happened. You still want to watch it to actually kind of figure out what's going on and see if there's anything that you're missing from the data. Sometimes we do projects in which one of us or someone will watch a bunch of film on stuff that isn't being recorded and add that, so then we can analyze it as data. I think watching film is super important, and I'm sure like the other analytics staffers in here would agree. Like I think you can only get so much out of the data, and you learn so much more understanding the actual game and the actual film. And I think everybody who like wants to work in sports analytics is there because they love the sport. So I think it's always really fun to whenever you get to do that. So I think it's super important.
Questions from the crowd? Raise your hand. Okay, we got a bunch. This is good. Work our way up.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a junior at Penn and I'm studying statistics. My question is for Zuri specifically. Since you work on the business side of things, how do the data needs from the business side versus the game side of the NFL differ?
I would say a lot of spreadsheets. I could definitely talk about it when it comes to the ticketing side. A lot of spreadsheets, working a lot closely with finance people. I have not gotten a chance to work too much within the football operation side, but I will say the way how they source information, the way how they disperse information, and they're interfacing with the other 32 teams, and every team has their way of pulling in information. So that has been sort of a challenge for us here at the league, but a lot of work within like Excel spreadsheets and sourcing that.
So on the health and player safety side of things, how has the turf versus grass debate been kind of communicated to team owners and kind of giving them the proper data and analysis to make the correct decision on that front?
Yeah, I think last year we shared some information about, the different types of surfaces and the impact we're seeing on, strain on, and the clubs do this themselves as well. In that regard, we're pretty much a supporting function to try and assist and inform ownership groups on what we're observing, in game, and then of course, in addition to like what they're seeing in practices.
Yeah, I think just to add, I think I'll just say it's a very difficult analysis because there's other factors such as weather and it's not just simple grass versus turf. Each surface can be different and there's stadium effects and there's a lot going on.
Other questions up front here as I keep going up. I'll get to you, don't worry. We got time.
Hi, my name is Kritin. I'm a junior in high school now, so probably one of the youngest in this room. My personal question for you guys would be like, how early do you guys know that sports analytics is, or even your job in the NFL was what you wanted to do?
Okay, that's a good question. So, probably for most of us, Moneyball was a very transformational, book and movie to come out. And I mean, like I didn't know I wanted to work in sports analytics, and I don't think this role existed, when I was going through school. It was more so coming from a math and data background. Before this, I worked at at 2K and Rockstar Games, and there's just a lot of data there, and you're looking at individuals almost in a similar level. So then when this opportunity, was created due to, the interest in sports analytics, that's where you're able to transition, I guess, some of those similar skills. I would say now having a really strong, and I think Tom Tango talked about this, but having a really strong background and comfortability in working with data can allow you to excel or have a unique perspective on the new jobs that are going to be created moving forward.
My family is a football family, so every Sunday we get together and talk a lot of crap about each other's teams. So I've always wanted to work and contribute to the NFL. And the question is like, how would I be able to do that? So I did, when I came to Howard, I actually was a marketing major, kind of like the fun stats with marketing and all that good stuff. But I realized that, I kind of like to build applications and look at the business side of things. So what I did, it was actually in 2015. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but there was an NFL hackathon that happened in San Francisco. I was not ready to actually work for the league, but I did talk to the recruiters there, and I was like, hey, talk to me like several years from now. I'll have all the experience I need on the software application side, and then we could get this going. So being able to have that as my North Star, I was like, okay, I can build applications and help support the league. This is what I will do, is what helped me get to where I'm at right now. And also networking goes a long way. But I always wanted to work in the sports industry, specifically with football. It's always been my dream job, actually. And yeah, I'm pretty lucky to get to do that.
Yeah, I mean, like Zuri, I grew up in a family that loved football. I grew up in Oakland, California, and my parents had season tickets for the then Oakland Raiders through basically all my life, until they moved. But I've always loved NFL. It's always been my favorite sport. It's been my favorite thing. And I've also always been a really big math person. I studied physics in undergrad, just because I love math and all that. And again, I don't know if many of these roles existed around the time I was a kid or when I was in undergrad. Some did, but not a ton. When I went to graduate school in data science, knowing that there could be a chance I could end up in sports, and I saw an NFL internship and I applied to it, and now I'm here. But yeah, I suppose I didn't exactly know when this sort of opportunity would have existed, but I always loved football and I always loved math, so it's really cool that I was able to combine those two passions.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm a grad student here in the Masters of Applied Data Science program here at CMU. Thank you, first of all, for taking your time to come speak with us. I was just sort of wondering, with respect to internal dashboarding, what sort of trade-offs and considerations do you make when you say you find something that's useful to look at, but then NFL execs come back to you and they say, no, we'd like to look at this instead? How much of it is you sort of persuading them what you're looking at is useful versus how much do you alter those reports based on what they come back with, if that's the sort of thing that happens?
I think you kind of you yourself will sort of look at the data and you'll have maybe an opinion, a finding, and you kind of want to lead them to what you think is the best finding. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I really want it this way, I want it this way. Sometimes you provide both looks. You provide the look that you think that they should be looking at, and you provide the look that they specifically ask for. I think you kind of have to do a little bit of both, and obviously you don't want to just ignore what they're asking for. But and obviously another thing I'll add is I love football, I love math, but there are people that work at the league that former players, former coaches, they know a lot more about football than I do, even though I love it and watch it all the time. So I have to respect the fact that they might be thinking a certain way because they know a lot more than I do in a certain respect.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm Madhu. I'm a senior undergrad student at Center College. And I was wondering, what challenges do you face day to day, and how do you overcome it?
My challenge that's been haunting me for close to a year is Amazon Web Service Cloud Development Kit. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that is an infrastructure as code. So instead of going through the AWS console, clicking and dropping and creating the resources you need, you actually build it through code. I've had experience with Terraform. I tried Pulumi, which is another infrastructure as code, but AWS CDK has been, keeps me up at night from time to time. But I get why we use that at the league. But those are the challenges that I've encountered here, as well as trying to understand the culture of the league. So I came from government contracting. Things run a little bit slow. We're a little bit more structured as far as we have 2-week sprints, we plan things, and then we get it done, and we do a demo, and then we talk about it afterwards. Here at the league, almost somewhat close to how the teams operate. Things are high pace. There's like, fast iteration of things. There's a lot of prototyping going on. And sometimes one of the things that I am completely against, because I did do some time with a startup, is working with a prototype and bringing that prototype into production. Though that gives me nightmares and that keeps me up at night. But my role here is to make sure that doesn't happen with our applications, that doesn't happen within our internal processes, and make sure we guide the data science team to follow like the best practice, so that when we need to scale on a particular prototype, like an application that the execs love, and they're like, you know what, I want to share this with the rest of the people in the league, we'll be able to do that in a smooth and concise process. But those are the challenges I face. I'm very grateful to have my manager, Andrew, and like the entire league to help me and support me in getting those things in place and not having to push back, like, no, we need to get this out, but like, no, let's build this the right way. But those are my challenges at the moment.
Yeah, I would say, and almost piggybacking off what you're saying, Zuri, is like understanding the intent and the whys for a lot of the different stakeholders. So you'll have groups with different incentives, but still looking at the same information. And so it's almost a bit of storytelling in the way and how you present that information for these different groups. And then as a part of the development as well, you're working with them, sort of iterating back and forth on how you can best share this information. It's a really interesting thing with like building applications or reports where after an end user sees something, a lot of ideas start to come up about, oh, this is, now that I can see this, this is what I'm interested in. Or how can we now look at this in a different way to having this information? So it's a lot of back and forth, and I think it's a good challenge because everyone's collaborating and communicating better as a result.
Yeah, I would say maybe one I would highlight. I think one thing that is always difficult is trying to make sure that you might build a really excellent model with the perfect technical specifications, but making it clear whenever you're explaining your results to people that they understand what's going on. And you might have the best model, but if no one understands what it means, that's difficult. So maybe that's something that I always try to get better at.
Questions? Raise your hand. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kevin Bear. I'm a sophomore at UCLA, and my question is about the difference between working for a league as opposed to a specific club. I think if you're working for a specific team, the mission is pretty simple. You just want to try and help the team win. But working for the league, that's not kind of the driving mission. What would you say defines that mission, and how do your projects kind of contribute to that?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think on the football side, I think, like our goal on the football side is to have the games as competitive as possible, as well officiated as possible, to sort of maximize everything about the game. We were very involved on the new kickoff play. I think part of the driving force behind that was to make a kickoff play that had a reasonably high return rate, as opposed to last year where there were very few returns, and that play was not an entertaining play because it was mostly just touchbacks. So our goal is to sort of improve that, have scoring at a certain level. So following all that, and also officiating, making sure that focusing on helping the officials in any way that we can.
So I probably should have mentioned this prior to the league. I did do some contracting work with the Wizards, and that was my experience of what it's like to work with a team. I came in like halfway through their season. It was a 6-month contract, And one of the things that I was able to see in that experience is every week is adjustment to how they could play better. And coming from a software engineer, because I was a software engineer for that time, my focus was, okay, here's this feature that they have. How can I implement it within their application that they have? So it's a little bit more intense as I watch like the data engineers and data analysts like try to get these things going. As me as a contractor, just like, all right, I'm just crank out this application. But I saw that how fast paced that environment is, like how things need to be done quickly. Now coming to the league, it's somewhat close to that. But at the league with my role currently, it's focused on the business side. So we're caring about viewership, we're caring about ticketing, finance, and all that good stuff. So it's intense, but it's not as intense. And their focus is more on like, how can you make people fall in love more with the game and spend money? So that was what I was able to see on like a high level business side. Engineering wise, I just got to build stuff a lot faster. No? Okay. All right.
We have a question from Steinberg. I'll just ask, when you ask the question, please speak close to the mic. Make sure we all can hear it.
Could you comment on what tech stack you guys are using to like pull in the data, process it, and put out applications?
Speak up. Could you speak up? We couldn't quite catch that. Speak closer to the microphone.
The question was about what the tech stack looks like for each of your respective areas.
Oh, the tech stack. Okay. So for data engineers on my end, it is Python. We do use Airbyte, MLflow, and yeah, MLflow is like here and there. A lot of AWS resources, and database we are looking into. We definitely use Postgres, DBeaver. When it comes to applications or like showing code and all that good stuff, is a beautiful mixture of Python and R. I'm a little bit biased. I prefer Python. Makes my life easier to deploy applications in ETL pipelines. Also, we use Docker a lot to transfer like applications, scripts, and all that good stuff within AWS. So that is the tech stack, unless I'm missing anything. Oh, Monte Carlo. Yeah.
I would say, especially over the past year, I've been radicalized by this application deployment experience. Like a lot of the tech stack, is Python, R, and SQL, a ton of SQL. But now when it comes to surfacing that visually, you have trade-offs when you're using, R or different Python libraries. So there's temptations and experimentations with, JavaScript or React. And I think where I'm biased towards now is building as much as we can and pushing them to APIs. So we have a large effort now using GraphQL to be able to pull information from different sources, different ways, and then distribute them to different front-end tools, different applications that can pull from that data in various languages.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions about that. No. Yeah, I think one of the apps that I've able to glance at use Next.js for the UI. But when it comes to data visualizations and apps, we use the Shiny framework. Both a combination. I think as of late, we only have it in R, Shiny R versus Python. But yeah, that's the tech stack that we have. It may grow, it may change over time, but it's what we have right now that works best for our workflow. Hope that answers your question.
Other questions? Okay, right here.
Hi, guys. I really appreciate you taking your time to come here today. So I'm in data engineering and healthcare, and I kind of have that same sort of overlap of coming from a different industry. Can you talk about your path like back into sports? It sounds like you always had that passion for it, but can you talk about like how you made your way kind of back in, and is the day-to-day sort of the same?
So what really got my foot into the door, outside of just that hackathon I went to, over 5 years ago, back in 2015. Oh my God, that's next year, 10 years. But I did a lot of hackathons. That's how I got into software engineering industry in general. Like I did a lot of hackathons, and the one that really put me on the map and got me into the door was the Women in Sports Data Hackathon. So the ladies, if you are interested in that, I highly recommend it. I did that. I had a team. We were both working ladies. Wasn't able to get much done, but they had a segment where I just submitted my resume, and that's when I was reached out by Kathy with the Wizards and then Andrew from the NFL. So my path is more so of like finding these type of programs that cater to that subject. And then on top of that, do the research in the background. So if you know for a fact that, hey, I want to do, I don't know, IT within like the league, there's going to be job postings across all the clubs that they're going to put up there. And you look at the bullet points and you're like, okay, they use this tool, they use this tech. How can I get this type of experience on my current job? Or what can I do outside of my job where I could get familiar with the tool? And I always recommend this for like a lot of students who's trying to break into the industry where they're like, I don't know what to do. Well, start tinkering with the tool set that they have on their website that they have for the job posting. Because then when you're able to do that and you boast about it, you talk about it, you brag about it, or you blog about it, people are going to see it. And they're going to see like, oh, this person know what they're doing, or this person's familiar with it. I don't have to teach them from the ground up. They're a self-starter, and people love self-starters. And then there's some clubs and there's some leagues that kind of do need those type of people on their team. So that's what I would recommend for folks who are trying to make that transition. And then at the same time, really be a self-starter and find those spaces that cater to the subject that you want. So for my case, sports. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that question really never goes away about like, you know, what you want to do or how you can get to a place you want to be. My manager at the league, Carly, put me through this really great exercise of like, write down like your resume 5 years from now, or your ideal job description. And that exercise really helps a lot because it's much easier to work backwards to understand, you know, what you can do or the projects that you're interested in that would get you there. You know, like for all of you coming to this conference today, that might be something that makes sense in that story of like where you want to go and why you might make decisions to pursue certain projects, because you have that end goal like written down. So I would strongly recommend that.
Thompson? No. Okay.
Any other questions? Oh, there we go.
Thanks. You guys have kind of talked about this a bit throughout this panel, but working with stakeholders, I was very curious after the talk last year about tagging all the equipment and tracking basically every piece of equipment in the league. Can you guys talk about what stakeholders you work with? And like, I get that you work with biz ops. Do you work with football ops at different clubs? Do you share kind of like strategic, like projects on strategic decisions with them? And like if teams have groups that are working in that space?
Yeah, so I'll say all my stakeholders are within the league office. I think I work on the football side, as I've sort of described. Like you're like they're like I think on maybe the business side, I think there's a little bit more like all the league and the teams are all kind of working together to help every club sort of succeed on the business side. I think on the football side, I think everyone is competitive with each other. So I'm not helping them. They're not really talking to each other. I think it's all much more separate on the football side. But specifically, I work with people in football operations. I work with people who sort of are doing stuff on football technology. I work with people in officiating. I work with people who do the NFL schedule. So I think that's kind of what I do, but it's all within the league office.
For me right now, it's with the media team and the ticketing and finance team. So those are generally internal. I have a feeling when it comes to the ticketing team, it might expand and go to all the 32 teams. But like Tom said, when it comes to the business side, a lot of talk amongst each other and wanting to uplift each other as far as like do a good job in business. But at this point, that's where my communications or connections with the stakeholders are.
Yes, like from the equipment and cleat tagging perspective, there are a lot of different groups that you'd probably be surprised interact with each other. So, you know, there's athletic trainers, equipment managers at the clubs. There are also the vendors that provide, you know, biometric statistics or health information specific for each of those clubs. and then there are the manufacturers as well of different pieces of equipment, and then there are companies that perform the scanning for that type of equipment. And so like you can get involved in different conversations about RFID tags and the quality of scans, and there's an interesting collaboration that happens with, like, you know, very distinct companies. But at the league office, you know, our intent, well, for the player health and safety side, our intent is to make the athletic trainers and equipment managers' lives as easy as possible, you know, and working with all of these different groups.
All right, we have one more question we'll take from Steinberg, and then other questions, feel free to be able to ask these three in the break. But Steinberg, what's the last question?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. My question is, in this sort of role, it seems like you have to, I guess, integrate a lot of different skill sets, you know, whether it's like technical expertise, sports knowledge. I'm sure there's like a communications component too. How would you guys rate your, I guess, expertise in those different areas?
For clarification, like rate ourselves and like I am 10 out of 10 when it comes to communication, or like rate as in like which one's more important in for our role?
I guess, like, do you all consider yourselves like experts in football, experts in like the technical skills that you bring to the table? Or do you feel like you're kind of experts, but it's really kind of the integration of those different skills that matters?
Okay. So when it comes to the technical side, I would deem myself an expert if I wrote a book on the subject. So if I wrote a book about Docker, then I'll consider myself an expert. But I would rate myself as enough to be dangerous within my role. Like very dangerous, like, ooh, she could get this going in like 2 days for us. But I will say the thing that I noticed a lot, my day-to-day job, I'm behind the computer a lot. So it's like 80% of coding and all that good stuff. But that 20% is communication. And I will say I am not 100% an expert at communication. And that's something I want to work on. So I'm talking about talking to people who have my technical background so they understand what I'm talking about. And then talking to people who have no idea what a load balancer is and like put it in very layman, easy terms. Like talking to my mom about what I do on a day-to-day job. I still need to fix that. So I would say for my ranking, there's always room for improvement, and I always want that because I feel like us as individuals, when we work on our skills, we want to always improve. There is no stopping point, unless you write a book on the subject. I feel like that. But that's how I would go about in ranking my skill sets for this particular role.
Yeah, so I'll say maybe I'll start with on the football side. If like, you know, if I'm compared to like the average person just walking on the street, I feel like I have a lot of football knowledge. But again, as I sort of noted, if you talk to former coaches and former players that work at the league, and I'm sure if you work for a club, like current coaches and current players, like you're not like I would not consider myself an expert in any way, shape, or form compared to them. So I still have a lot to learn in that space, even though, you know, compared to maybe the average person, you might feel like you know a lot. You still have plenty to learn. And same on the technology front. Like, you know, like I know how to code. I feel pretty good about it, but there's always more I can learn. And I think I feel equipped to do my role, but at the same time, I think there's always room for improvement in sort of learning new ways, new techniques, new models, new packages. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely always room for improvement. Like maybe I could rank myself as an expert Googler, honestly, because a lot of the things that, or a lot of projects we come across, you know, it's not necessarily something that we've done exactly before. So there's a lot of like empathy is a big skill that's involved in trying to understand, you know, other stakeholders' perspectives, and then trying to see the big picture as to, you know, what they really need. So difficult to rank, you know, that specifically, but you know, you keep kind of moving the goalposts forward and learning new skills, and as you're working with people.
Big round of applause for Tom, Zuri, and Clive. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back here at 11:30. All right, so take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back.